Good morning, everybody. Let's talk about perception, identity, and identity disturbances. See, I was just inspired to this topic by different occurrences and chains of thoughts. Um, I was always interested in human I always I almost wanted to say in human pathology, but actually I was never interested in human pathology. Um, I was always interested in psychology and phenomenons like when the first conquistadores in the 1600s arrived in Native America. The Native Americans had difficulties to process what they saw. So there were reportings that when they saw the ships the first time, the big Spanish ships, they translated them into something they can at least closely relate to. So um, to their symbols and myth. So they saw them as floating mountains or as clouds, and also the first conquistadores going to land with their horses and steel armor and guns, and it was like an alien invasion for them, and they projected their mythological world onto them. So some saw them as gods or um, as something supernatural. Okay, so this is the closest way we can get to how we would perceive an alien invasion or something that we have absolutely um, no personal experience to relate to. So the next thing we relate to are symbols and archetypes of the collective unconsciousness. And then we project this into that what we see. So there is something that we see, a real source, and when we would capture this with a camera that is just not caring about what it captures. It just, a camera would always capture the same thing, but the brain processes information extremely, and especially if it has never seen what it sees or perceives. This is why optical illusions work, and yeah, the brain is rendering a lot of things. It adds information, it also cuts away information. It does both. Um, and I find this a very interesting topic. The fact that that perception is something that is influenced both by what we project into the thing that we perceive, but also by the nature of the thing itself. But what we then perceive is something in between. Um, yes, and I also thought about this because of the recent drone sightings, or should I say mass hysteria, going on, especially around the area of New Jersey. But um, well, I don't want to go into this because I'm actually not in this topic of UFOs. But what I find very interesting in this regard is the psychology behind it, because definitely when we think about aliens and UFOs, you know, it creates fears. It is very interesting at the same time. It's fascinating and so on. So it creates a strong psychological effect that will distort perception. It has to distort perception. Nobody can perceive something they have never perceived before in the same collected, calm way that we perceive a car. But the thing is, perception is very interesting, and I'm not a specialist in this. I'm just talking my my thoughts about it. Okay, so if I see a car that I see every day, I don't even see the car anymore. My brain just briefly sees um a few check a few, it makes a few checks and says, okay, this is the car. It sounds like the car. It is the color. It has four wheels. I don't even need to look more. So I kind of summon the car, and my brain and my especially my senses don't have to look very um, keenly, or I don't have to extract further information to verify that it's really a car, right? And this is something also that I find impressive in people, when people have this sense to still look very awake. This is probably something that special agents need to have, this ability to not always believe what they see. So this is just people that when you talk with them, they notice small changes in your face, or they say, hey, there is something here, or there's something there, or you changed this or that. It's people who have a higher perception. They see things that others are just repressed with the brain. They just, some people would would only focus on the necessary information they need, and they see you as that face that you always are. They see the car as the car that it always is. But there's people who look a little bit further. They see small little changes, and this can be an important ability, but it can at the same time be distracting. So the drone sightings in especially New Jersey is a phenomenon like many phenomenons that occurred in the history of mankind. So, and I believe the interesting part is the psychology behind it, because there's people who are afraid, there's people who are excited, there's people who are angry about it, because we see all these emotional reactions on the media to this topic, okay? And what I find very interesting about this whole thing is the psychological side of how much do we project into these things. So, what is the projected part of consciousness, subconsciousness, collective subconsciousness? And what part is the reality? What is this reality? What is the facts? What is the undeniable facts happening? Um, yeah, I think this is a topic that in the future I want to work on this. Um, and also perception and I don't know how to frame it. Confusion, confusion, mass delusion, mass hysteria in terms of people who have identity disturbance, because I also witness a personal experience, unfortunately, that people with a strong identity disturbance, like probably something that is clinical, Um, and yeah, we talked on this channel that people like that can be externally regulated, which means they need external emotional vulnerable targets to regulate themselves, and then they seem to be stable while everybody around them falls apart. And then they mirror kind of energies. So they then pretend, oh well, I'm stable, everything's good. Yet it goes on the expense of people around them. And what I find almost demonic or scary in this is that these kinds of deceptions, I don't know how to call it, deception, hypnosis, deception, confusion, can even spread to people who are not directly exposed to the epicenter of this happening, but being carried by people who suffered from that, be carried on and be projected into further people. So it really is a very infective, metastasizing identity disturbance that sends shocks and waves and aftershocks in every direction, and is it can be very camouflaged. Okay, so I am fully aware that my message today is kind of, or seems to be, going in many directions at the same time, and I'm not going into deep on any of these topics now. But I think I want to bring myself and you to a point of reviewing perception. And what I want to use and work on is the psychological education knowledge that we can extract, because we're living in the day of information, about these cases. I posted them in my community section as a text using ChatGPT to extract information about this topic. Yeah, about historical cases of, let's say, identity disturbances or clashing of worlds, um, and also the effects of projection through fear, excitement, expectation, versus what actually really happens, and how to maneuver in this without being too naive. Okay, and ultimately also, unfortunately, the pathological side of um, identity disturbances and how they can spread and metastasize into other people. Okay. um yeah, this will be a topic that I probably will take us on. It's gonna be a wild ride.